Ethan Hale's brush moved like a ghost across the canvas, its bristles weaving streaks of violet and obsidian into the chaos of a celestial battlefield. Tendrils of crimson flame twisted through the starry void, licking at the edges of hulking starships that hung suspended, broken, like the carcasses of great sea beasts. On the surface of a shattered moon, figures clashed in desperate battle. He didn't know why he painted this. The scene wasn't from memory or imagination. It was something else entirely. Something he couldn't shake. He wiped a streak of paint from his wrist onto his jeans, stepping back to study the painting. The war depicted on the canvas felt alive, as though the figures on it were fighting for their very existence. Alien soldiers in vivid hues, amethyst skin, jade scales, golden eyes, faced off against a shadowy army whose forms seemed half flesh, half nightmare. "Where is this even coming from?" Ethan muttered to himself, his voice swallowed by the cavernous silence of the studio. The single bulb overhead cast sharp shadows, making the figures on the painting seem to writhe in the dim light. Ethan pushed his dark hair out of his face, sighing. His hands trembled, though not from exhaustion. This was his third straight night in the studio, and yet he didn't feel drained. He felt driven, like he was channeling something that wasn't entirely his. The thought unsettled him, but he couldn't stop. His brush darted back to the canvas. This time, he added streaks of white, streaking them across the sky like the tail of a comet. The light seemed to erupt from one figure in particular, a lone warrior, human-like, holding aloft a staff glowing with impossible energy. The figure faced the shadows alone, and somehow Ethan's gut told him the warrior wasn't fighting to win. They were buying time. The sound of a door opening made Ethan jump. He spun around, almost dropping his palette. "I knocked twice," said a voice, low and calm. "You didn't answer." Standing in the doorway was a tall figure cloaked in flowing fabric that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The visitor's face was elongated, with soft, lilac-colored skin and deep-set eyes that glimmered like polished amber. Ethan blinked. He'd never seen anything like it in real life. This was no costume. "What the hell?" Ethan took a step back, clutching the palette like a shield. "You are Ethan Hale," the figure said as if it were an unshakable truth. It stepped closer, folding its hands in front of it. "Your art speaks louder than you think." What are you?" Ethan demanded, his voice breaking. His pulse hammered in his ears. "I am Tivran," the being replied. Its tone was even, almost serene, but there was weight behind every word. "I come on behalf of my people, and many others. Your work has reached places you cannot yet imagine, and it has drawn attention, both hopeful and hostile." Ethan shook his head, laughing nervously. "Okay, this has got to be a joke. Some kind of weird cosplay thing. Did one of my friends put you up to this? Because this is—" Tivran's hand lifted and a small device projected a hologram into the air. Ethan froze. The projection wasn't from Earth. It couldn't be. It showed a vast alien council chamber, filled with beings of every shape and color, each speaking in a language Ethan couldn't begin to decipher. But in the center of the image was his painting, or something terrifyingly close to it. "This," Tivran said, motioning to the painting on the hologram, "matches the prophecy of the Vikiran scrolls, a text older than many stars. It speaks of a human artist who would bring light to the darkness and rally the galaxy against the Dominion." The what?" Ethan stammered, staring at the image. His painting was there, his work. But how? And a prophecy. What did that even mean? "The Dominion Empire," Tivran continued, "has ruled through fear and control for millennia. They see you now as a threat, Ethan Hale. They will come for you." Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't even know what this Dominion is. I just paint. I'm not a warrior or a revolutionary or whatever you think I am. I'm nobody. That is not how the universe sees you." Tivran stepped closer, his amber eyes fixed on Ethan's. "And it is certainly not how the Dominion sees you." The room suddenly shuddered, the walls groaning under the force of something massive. A deafening roar filled the air, and the single bulb above Ethan shattered, plunging the room into darkness. Outside, the night sky was alive with streaks of fire, ships descending. "They're here," Tevrin said, his voice steady but urgent. "You must come with me. Now." "Wait, wait, wait!" Ethan grabbed his backpack and slung it over his shoulder, his head spinning. "This can't be happening. This isn't real. It's just—" The studio door exploded inward and a wave of heat swept over them. Ethan shielded his face as figures stepped through the smoke. They were humanoid but wrong, their bodies twisted and segmented, as though grown in pieces. Their eyes glowed an eerie crimson. "Terminate the target," one of them hissed in a voice like breaking glass. Before Ethan could scream, Tevrin's hands moved in a blur, releasing a pulse of energy from the device on his wrist. The Dominion soldiers staggered back, their forms flickering as though caught in a malfunctioning projection. "Move!" Tevrin shouted, grabbing Ethan by the arm and pulling him toward a side exit. The pair stumbled out into the open air. The night was chaos. A Dominion dropship hovered above, casting long shadows across the street. Tevrin ushered Ethan toward an inconspicuous-looking vehicle that hummed with power when it opened. Ethan barely had time to dive inside before the ship took off, leaving the burning studio behind. From the safety of the ship's cabin, Ethan's eyes fell to the relic on the seat beside him, a strange object that seemed to pulse faintly with its own light, its surface covered in indecipherable patterns. "What is that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Tevrin glanced at the relic, then back at Ethan. "It is the key to everything, and it chose you." Ethan stared at the object, his mind a storm of fear and disbelief. As the ship sped away into the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he'd ever known was about to change, and that the universe itself had just begun painting him into a story far larger than he could imagine. The hum of the alien ship was low and rhythmic, like a deep mechanical heartbeat. Ethan leaned against the cold metal wall of the cabin, his chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths. His mind reeled, trying to process the explosion, the alien soldiers, the mysterious relic now glowing faintly on the seat beside him. Every nerve in his body screamed that he was in over his head. "You expect me to believe," he said, his voice tight, "that some cosmic prophecy painted a bullseye on my back? That I'm supposed to save the galaxy or something?" Tevrin glanced at him from the pilot's seat. His elongated hands moved deftly across the glowing controls, adjusting the ship's course. "Not the galaxy. Just enough of it to make a difference." "Oh, well, that's so much better," Ethan snapped, throwing his hands in the air. "Do you hear how insane this sounds? I'm an artist. I've never even left Earth. Hell, I barely leave my apartment unless I need coffee or new brushes." "Then consider this an opportunity to broaden your horizons," Tevrin said calmly, though his amber eyes gleamed with a flicker of amusement. Ethan groaned, burying his face in his hands. The cool metal of his paint-streaked fingers did little to ground him. The relic's soft pulsations filled the silence like a second heartbeat, and every so often it emitted a faint, chiming note like the toll of a distant bell. "What's with that thing?" Ethan asked, nodding toward the relic. "Why is it glowing, and why does it sound like a wind chime from space?" Tevrin's expression grew serious. "The relic is ancient, created by a species that vanished long before the Dominion's rise. It's said to hold knowledge of their downfall and their warnings, but its secrets are locked. Only someone with a certain intuition can decipher its messages." "Great," Ethan muttered, leaning back. "So now I'm the universe's magic 8-ball." Tevrin didn't laugh. Instead, he adjusted the ship's trajectory, and the stars outside the viewport stretched into streaks of light as they entered faster-than-light travel. "You're more important than you realize, Ethan Hale. The Dominion sees your work as a threat because it speaks to something they fear above all else. Hope." Ethan snorted. "Hope? Yeah, that's great. I'm sure they're shaking in their boots over my paintbrush." "You underestimate the power of storytelling," Tevrin replied, his voice steady. "It transcends barriers, language, species, culture. Stories can unite where politics fail, inspire where logic falters. The Dominion controls through fear and division, and you, unknowingly, are their antithesis. Before Ethan could respond, a sharp alarm cut through the cabin, and Tevrin's head snapped toward the controls. The calmness in his expression fractured. "What's that?" Ethan asked, gripping the seat. "Trouble," Tivrin said, his hands flying across the dashboard. The ship lurched, and Ethan's stomach somersaulted. Outside, a Dominion fighter craft dropped out of hyperspace, sleek and predatory, its crimson lights glowing like the eyes of a hunting beast. "Why does everything in this galaxy want to kill me?" Ethan shouted over the warning klaxons. "They don't want to kill you," Tevrin corrected as he banked hard, dodging a volley of energy blasts that lit up the cabin like lightning. "They want to erase you." "Oh, well, that's comforting." The ship veered sharply and Ethan slammed into the wall. Pain shot through his side, but before he could complain, Tevrin tapped a button on his console, and the ship's rear hatch opened to reveal empty space. Ethan stared wide-eyed as Tevrin reached for the relic. "Whoa, what are you doing?" Ethan asked, panic rising in his throat. "Throwing them off our trail," Tevrin said, shoving the relic into Ethan's hands. Its surface was warm, almost alive. "Hold this." Wait. What's happening?" Ethan demanded, his voice cracking. Tevrin didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a smaller device, a cube-like object that emitted a soft hum, and hurled it out the open hatch. The cube burst into a flash of light, creating a decoy signal that mimicked the relic's unique energy signature. The Dominion fighter immediately changed course, pursuing the decoy. Tevrin sealed the hatch and let out a slow breath. "That should buy us some time." Ethan clutched the relic to his chest, glaring. "You could have warned me before opening the back door of your death trap." "I did," Tevrin replied, his tone maddeningly calm. "You were just too busy panicking to notice." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when the stars outside shifted again. This time they slowed and condensed into pinpricks of light, revealing a massive station floating in the void. It was shaped like a vast, hollow sphere with intricate architecture that gleamed faintly in hues of silver and teal. Ships of every size and design orbited the structure, and the sight stole Ethan's breath. "That," Tivrin said, nodding toward the station, "is Sanctuary, the seat of what remains of the Galactic Alliance." The ship docked with a soft jolt, and Tivrin motioned for Ethan to follow. As they descended the ramp, the sounds of Sanctuary engulfed them, a cacophony of alien voices, mechanical hums, and the occasional burst of music from an unseen corner. The air was cooler here, tinged with a faint metallic tang, and the lights were soft, casting long shadows across the bustling corridors. Ethan barely had time to gawk before a figure strode toward them. She was humanoid, but her fiery red skin and hair that crackled like embers marked her as something far from Earth. Her piercing black eyes locked onto Ethan, and her expression was less than welcoming. "This is the human?" she asked, her voice sharp and clipped. "This is the great hope of the Alliance?" Ethan raised a hand. Hi. I guess that's me." The woman rolled her eyes. "I'm Kadra, leader of what's left of the rebellion, and you look like you'd break in half under real pressure." "Nice to meet you too," Ethan said, forcing a tight smile. "I've had a pretty stressful day, so maybe cut me some slack." "Kadra," Tevrin interrupted, his voice firm, "Ethan is here because the relic chose him. Whether you approve or not is irrelevant." Kadra crossed her arms, her fiery hair sparking faintly. "We'll see if he's worth the risk. If he's not, we're all as good as dead." "Wow, you're just a ray of sunshine, huh?" Ethan muttered, earning a sharp look from Kadra. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on, but before the argument could escalate, the relic in Ethan's hands chimed again. This time, its glow intensified, casting strange patterns on the walls. Tevrin's eyes widened. "It's reacting. To this place." "What does that mean?" Ethan asked, his heart pounding. "It means," Tevrin said slowly, "that the answers we need might be closer than we thought." Ethan glanced down at the relic, its light reflecting in his eyes. He had no idea what secrets it held, but one thing was clear. It wasn't done with him yet. The chamber was a kaleidoscope of light and sound. High above, orbs of soft luminescence floated like miniature suns, casting shifting patterns across the polished, iridescent floor. Walls shimmered with holograms of star maps and alien runes, their symbols in constant motion, as though alive. The air smelled faintly metallic, tinged with the ozone sharpness of active machinery. It was a place of knowledge, of strategy, a place where decisions were made, and right now it was a battleground of words. Ethan stood near the center of the room, his palms slick with sweat, the relic clutched tightly in his hands. Around him, representatives of the Galactic Alliance's many species filled the space, their forms as varied as their voices. Tall, slender beings with translucent skin that rippled like water, compact, four-armed creatures with crystalline exoskeletons, and serpentine figures coiled on platforms, their jewel-like scales gleaming. All of them were yelling. "This is absurd!" a small, hunched creature with a bulbous head shouted, its voice high-pitched and grating, its silver eyes locked onto Ethan. "We are entrusting the fate of the galaxy to a primitive species that only recently learned to leave its own atmosphere?" "Hey," Ethan muttered under his breath. "We've been to the moon, thank you very much." The being continued, undeterred. "Humans are erratic, emotional, and prone to irrational decisions. Their brains lack the necessary complexity to grasp higher dimensional thinking. Why should we waste resources on one of them?" A taller alien with angular features and eyes like molten gold stepped forward, its tone icy. "The Dominion has crushed entire civilizations with logic and precision. The notion that a human, a species known for its chaos, could aid us is laughable." Kadra, standing to Ethan's left, crossed her arms and smirked. "Finally, something we agree on." "Okay, first of all," Ethan interjected, his voice rising, "I'm right here. You can insult me to my face like decent people or aliens would." A low chuckle rippled through the room, though it was unclear if it was with him or at him. Ethan took a deep breath and glanced at Tivrin, who stood calm and silent on his right, his amber eyes scanning the room. "You said the relic chose him," a serpentine alien hissed, its voice like dry leaves rustling. "Yet it has chosen wrongly before. Why should this time be different? He is just as likely to doom us as he is to save us." Ethan felt the weight of their stares pressing down on him, and his frustration bubbled over. "You're all so hung up on how superior you are, but none of you are holding this," he said, raising the relic slightly. "This thing lights up when I'm around, so maybe, just maybe, there's something to that." The bulbous-headed alien scoffed, the sound like a cough mixed with a squeal. "A coincidence, nothing more. Humans are creatures of chance, not purpose." Ethan threw up his hands. "Oh, for crying out loud. Do you people hear yourselves? You're supposed to be this big alliance, right? Fighting the Dominion together, and yet you're standing here arguing over whether my brain is big enough for the job." A sudden silence fell over the room, broken only by the faint hum of the relic. Ethan blinked, realizing what he'd just said. Tivrin's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Humans," the serpentine alien said, its voice dripping with disdain, "are known for their impulsivity. You see? Already he is proving our point." Ethan sighed. "Look, I get it. I'm not some hyper-intelligent, multidimensional genius. I'm just a guy who paints weird pictures. But for some reason, this relic thinks I can help you. So maybe instead of tearing me down, you could focus on the actual problem, the Dominion." A deep, resonant voice cut through the room, silencing all murmurs. "And yet, he is not wrong." Ethan turned to see a massive figure step forward, its body like carved obsidian, with glowing blue veins running through its chest and arms. It was easily twice his height, but its presence was calm, almost meditative. "Logic alone has not saved us," the figure rumbled. "Our alliance fractures under the weight of its own mistrust. If this human can inspire even the faintest hope, should we not explore the possibility?" The room murmured in response, some nodding, others exchanging skeptical glances. Kadra, however, rolled her eyes and stepped forward, her fiery hair crackling faintly. "Inspire hope? What, with finger painting? The Dominion isn't going to care about his art, no matter how prophetic it is." "Then what do you suggest, Kadra?" Tivrin asked, his tone measured. "Fight alone?" Tear down what remains of the Alliance because you cannot see past your own skepticism? Kadra's jaw tightened, and she glared at Tivrin. I suggest we stop wasting time on pipe dreams and start planning a real defense. The Dominion is closing in, and I won't put my people's lives in the hands of a man who probably can't even operate a toaster. Ethan raised a finger. Hey, I'll have you know I'm very good with toasters. Kadra ignored him, turning back to the council. This is our last chance. We can't afford to put our trust in guesswork. Ethan felt a sharp pang in his chest. He wanted to yell, to fight back, but a tiny voice in his mind whispered that Kadra might be right. What could he offer that these beings, with all their intellect and advanced technology, couldn't do themselves? The relic pulsed again, and Ethan's head swam with images. Chaotic flashes of destruction, shimmering fragments of starships falling through the void, and a looming shadow that seemed to blot out the stars themselves. He staggered, clutching the relic tighter. Ethan! Tivrin's voice was laced with concern. Ethan's voice faltered. He closed his eyes, focusing on the images. They were jumbled, like puzzle pieces from different boxes, but one thing stood out. A location. A cluster of stars arranged in a pattern he couldn't place, but instinctively recognized. I saw something, he said, his voice stronger now. The Dominion has a weapon, something huge. I think it's why the relic activated. The council erupted into questions, but Tivrin raised a hand for silence. What kind of weapon? I don't know, Ethan admitted, but it's massive. It's not just for conquering worlds, it's for wiping them out, entire civilizations. Kadra's skepticism faltered for a split second, but she quickly masked it. Convenient vision. How do we know you're not just guessing? Because it makes sense, Ethan shot back. You said it yourself. The Dominion thrives on control. What better way to keep the galaxy in line than by holding something like that over everyone's heads? The room fell into a heavy silence. Even the bulbous-headed alien seemed to hesitate. This is why humans are dangerous, the serpentine alien hissed. They think in abstractions, in emotional leaps, not logic. Yet, they are often correct. Tivrin stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. It seems we have a course of action, but the Alliance must stand together to see it through. Kadra sighed, glaring at Ethan. Fine, but if this goes sideways, don't say I didn't warn you. Ethan exhaled, relief and dread swirling in equal measure. He had seen a glimpse of the Dominion's power, and it terrified him. But there was one thing he knew for sure. They had to act. The relic hummed softly in his hands, its faint light a quiet reminder that the future wasn't set in stone, yet. The starfield outside the viewport blurred as the Alliance fleet shifted into hyperspace, the hum of engines thrumming through the hull like a giant metallic heartbeat. Ethan sat cross-legged in the center of the war room, his gaze fixed on the relic as it hovered in midair, rotating slowly. Its light pulsed with a faint rhythm, illuminating the faces of the gathered council members with an eerie, otherworldly glow. This better work, Kadra muttered, arms crossed as she leaned against a console. Her fiery hair crackled faintly, betraying her agitation. We're putting everything on a vision from a man whose greatest accomplishment is apparently painting weird fever dreams. Ethan raised an eyebrow but didn't rise to the bait. For the record, I prefer prophetic masterpieces, but hey, you call them what you want. Enough, Tivrin said, his voice calm but firm. The relic guided us here, and we have no choice but to trust its purpose and Ethan's insight. The Dominion weapon must be found and neutralized before it can be used. Ethan looked up from the relic, his expression uneasy. About that. I think there's more to this than just neutralizing a weapon. It's not just a bomb or a death ray or whatever you're imagining. It's bigger. The council leaned in, their alien faces reflecting various degrees of curiosity and skepticism. The serpentine alien, whose jeweled scales gleamed in the low light, hissed softly. Elaborate, human. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to put the chaotic images from the relic into words. Okay, so, when I touch the relic, I didn't just see the weapon. I saw what it represents. The Dominion doesn't just use fear as a tool, they embody it. This weapon is designed to strip away hope itself, to crush the idea of resistance before it even begins. The bulbous-headed alien snorted, a noise like a deflating balloon. Metaphors. Humans and their incessant metaphors. What does that even mean? It means, Ethan said, his voice sharpening, that this isn't just about blowing up planets. It's about breaking minds. The weapon uses some kind of psychological manipulation. Waves, maybe? Frequencies? I don't know the science, but I do know what I saw. It's designed to make people give up. Completely. A murmur rippled through the council chamber. Tevrin stepped closer, his amber eyes narrowing thoughtfully. A weapon of despair. It would explain how the Dominion has maintained control for so long. Kadra, for once, didn't have a sarcastic remark. Instead, she looked at Ethan, her expression unreadable. And you figured all this out just by touching a glowing rock? Ethan shrugged. I don't know how it works, okay? I just see things. It's like putting together a puzzle where half the pieces are missing, but you can still tell what the picture is supposed to be. That is the essence of intuition, Tivrin said quietly. A uniquely human gift. While many species rely solely on logic, humans have the capacity to sense patterns and outcomes before they fully form. It is both their strength and their danger. Kadra scoffed, though there was less venom in her tone. Or it's blind luck. We'll see which one it is soon enough. The ship jolted as it exited hyperspace, and the hum of the engines shifted to a lower pitch. A voice crackled over the intercom. We're approaching the coordinates. Dominion presence confirmed. Multiple ships detected. Ethan's stomach twisted as the war room's holographic display lit up, showing the Dominion fleet spread across the sector. At the center of the formation was the weapon itself, a colossal, monolithic structure, its surface bristling with spires that radiated a sickly, pulsating light. That's it, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. The sight of the weapon sent a chill down his spine like a shadow pressing against his mind. That's what I saw. Kadra clenched her fists. Looks like a fight is inevitable. Good thing I brought enough firepower to make these bastards regret their existence. Tevrin placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression grave. This is not a battle we can win through brute force alone. If Ethan's vision is correct, the weapon's true power lies in its ability to sow chaos and fear. We must strike with precision. Precision, huh? Ethan said, eyeing the Dominion fleet. So what's the plan? Because if this thing is as bad as I think it is, we don't have time for a committee vote. Kadra smirked despite herself. You're catching on, human. The plan came together quickly, a desperate gamble that hinged on Ethan's ability to interpret the relic's guidance. He and Tivrin would infiltrate the weapon, using the relic to disable its core, while Kadra led the fleet in a diversionary assault to draw the Dominion's attention. It was reckless, dangerous, and had a slim chance of success. In other words, it was exactly the kind of thing Ethan had spent his life avoiding. As the mission began, Ethan found himself aboard a smaller stealth craft with Tivrin, the two of them speeding toward the weapon under the cover of the Alliance's attack. The ship's interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of metal and ozone. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the occasional beeping of the navigation console. Ethan glanced at Tivrin. So, do you do this kind of thing often? Sneaking into heavily armed superweapons with a guy who doesn't know what he's doing? Tivrin didn't look away from the controls. More often than I would like. Great, Ethan muttered. Glad I'm in good hands. The ship shuddered as it entered the weapon's outer defenses, dodging automated turrets and swarms of Dominion fighters. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, the adrenaline almost drowning out his fear. Almost. When they finally docked inside the weapon, the air felt colder, heavier, as though the structure itself radiated malice. The corridors were dark and labyrinthine, the walls pulsating faintly with an unnatural light. Ethan gripped the relic tightly, its warmth a small comfort against the oppressive atmosphere. Stay close, Tivrin said, his voice low. The core should be ahead. Ethan followed, his eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of movement. The deeper they went, the stronger the relic's light became, illuminating alien glyphs etched into the walls. Ethan's mind buzzed with fragments of insight, pieces of a puzzle he didn't fully understand. Finally, they reached the core chamber. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness. At the center stood the weapon's power source, a swirling vortex of energy suspended within a lattice of crystalline structures. The relic's glow intensified, and Ethan's vision blurred as flashes of destruction filled his mind. He staggered, clutching his head. It's reacting. I think this is it. Tivrin nodded, his movements swift and deliberate. The relic must synchronize with the core. It will disrupt the weapon's field and render it inert. Ethan hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. What if it doesn't work? Tivrin placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we will adapt. That is what you do best, is it not? Ethan managed a shaky laugh. Sure, let's call it that. As he placed the relic into the core's control interface, its light exploded outward, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. The weapon's hum faltered, then turned into a deafening wail as the energy within the core began to destabilize. But the Dominion wasn't about to let them leave unchallenged. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor behind them. Tivrin drew his weapon, his expression unyielding. Go, Ethan. The relic will finish its work. I will hold them off. What? No. I'm not leaving you, Ethan protested. You must, Tivrin said firmly. This weapon was built to end hope. Show them it cannot. The tension in Tivrin's voice was a rare crack in his composure, and it hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Don't die, okay? Tivrin smiled faintly. I will do my best. Ethan ran, the sound of gunfire and shouts fading behind him as he sprinted through the labyrinthine corridors. The weapon trembled as the core destabilized, and he barely made it back to the stealth craft before the entire structure began to collapse. As he blasted out of the weapon's debris field, Ethan watched from the viewport as the Dominion fleet scattered, their morale shattered. The Alliance had won this battle, not through strength but through hope and intuition. And for the first time, Ethan realized the full weight of what humanity could bring to the galaxy. The future wasn't set. It was painted with every action they took, one stroke at a time. The Dominion weapon collapsed in on itself with a soundless implosion, its dark energy dissolving into the void like ink washed away by rain. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat of the stealth craft, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The glow of the relic had faded, its once vibrant light now reduced to a faint, pulsing ember cradled in his lap. Beyond the viewport, the remnants of the Dominion fleet scattered like startled insects, their cohesion broken. The Alliance ships rallied, their coordinated movements a stark contrast to the enemy's disarray. Ethan knew the battle wasn't over. There were still skirmishes to be fought, casualties to mourn. But the tide had turned. He set the autopilot and leaned back, staring at the flickering console lights. Well, he muttered to no one in particular, that was insane. A crackle came over the comms. Hale! Kadra's voice snapped, sharp and alive. You better not be dead. I didn't sign off on some stupid martyrdom stunt. Ethan smirked, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Not dead. Definitely traumatized, though. Thanks for checking. Her laugh came through, begrudging but real. Good. If you'd gotten yourself killed, I'd have to come back and haunt you. Now get back to the flagship. Tivrin's message said you made it out, but we've got a lot to discuss. Ethan swallowed hard at the mention of Tivrin, his chest tightening. He'd left the alien historian behind to hold off the Dominion soldiers. He'd made a promise not to die, but no guarantees. Ethan glanced at the relic, its faint light almost mournful. Yeah, he said softly. On my way. The flagship's hangar buzzed with activity as Ethan landed. Crews scrambled to repair damaged fighters, the smell of scorched metal and burning fuel hanging heavy in the air. Kadra was waiting as he stepped down the ramp, her fiery hair crackling in agitation. She was flanked by several Alliance leaders, their expressions a mixture of relief and guarded curiosity. Nice of you to join us, hero, Kadra said, her arms crossed. "You've been making quite the impression." Ethan scratched the back of his neck, his gaze flicking to the gathered leaders. Hi. I guess thanks for not, voting to throw me out an airlock earlier." The bulbous-headed alien from the council stepped forward, its silver eyes narrowing. "Do not mistake tolerance for approval, human. Your success today was improbable." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Improbable? You mean saving your collective butts from being turned into a galaxy-wide cautionary tale?" "Yeah, you're welcome." Kadra snorted, clearly enjoying the exchange, while another council member, a crystalline being with a shimmering, translucent body, spoke. "While the human's methods may lack refinement, the outcome cannot be denied. The Dominion is in retreat, and the weapon is destroyed." "Thanks to his intuition," Tavrin's voice interjected from behind them. Ethan spun around, his heart leaping. Tavrin limped into the hangar, his robes torn and his amber eyes weary but alive. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "You're okay," Ethan said, rushing forward. "I mean, you look terrible, but you're okay." Tavrin gave a faint smile. "It takes more than a few Dominion soldiers to finish me, though," he added wryly. "Next time, perhaps you could wait before leaving me behind." "I'll keep that in mind," Ethan said, grinning. "Glad you made it." Kadra stepped forward, her tone softening. "You did good out there, Tavrin. Both of you." Ethan blinked, startled by the rare compliment. "Was that approval? From you?" "Don't push your luck," Kadra shot back, but the corner of her mouth twitched in a hint of a smile. The celebration began cautiously. On the Alliance flagship, the mood was subdued at first, the weight of losses and the enormity of the fight ahead casting long shadows. But as word of the Dominion's retreat spread, relief turned to cautious joy, and then to something more profound: hope. Ethan found himself standing at the edge of a gathering in the flagship's central atrium. Alien species mingled, their differences momentarily set aside as they shared stories, laughter, and tentative camaraderie. The air was filled with the hum of unfamiliar music and the scent of alien foods, spices sharp enough to sting the nose, sweet aromas that made Ethan's mouth water. Tavrin appeared beside him, his movement slow but deliberate. "A remarkable sight," he said, nodding toward the mingling crowd. "You have given them something they have not had in a long time." "What's that?" Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. "Belief," Tavrin said, "in each other, in themselves. That is no small gift." Ethan looked down at the relic, now dull and silent in his hands. "It wasn't just me. The relic, it showed me things, yeah, but it was all of us working together that made this happen." "That is precisely the point," Tavrin said. "The relic guided you, but it was your choices, your humanity, that turned vision into action." Kadra joined them, holding 2 glasses of something fluorescent green. She handed one to Ethan with a smirk. "Drink up, hero. You earned it." Ethan took a cautious sip, wincing as the liquid burned its way down his throat. "What is this, liquid fire?" "Close," Kadra said, laughing. "It's called Zane. Strong stuff. Puts hair on your chest." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure I don't need any more of that, thanks." The 3 of them stood in companionable silence, watching the celebration unfold. Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by something new, a sense of possibility. In the days that followed, the Alliance began to rebuild. The Dominion, fractured and leaderless, retreated to the edges of known space, their grip on the galaxy finally broken. For the first time in generations, the disparate species of the Alliance worked together, their newfound unity fueled by the lessons of their shared victory. Ethan became something of a reluctant celebrity. His paintings, once seen as peculiar and abstract, now adorned the halls of Sanctuary and beyond, symbols of the Alliance's resilience and hope. He spent hours creating new works, each one a tribute to the people and cultures he had come to know. His masterpiece, however, was something extraordinary. On a newly chosen neutral planet, a massive wall had been erected, a blank canvas for Ethan to create a mural that would tell the story of the Alliance's triumph. With help from artists of every species, he worked tirelessly, blending colors and styles into a seamless tapestry of unity. The final image depicted a galaxy transformed, ships soaring together through the stars, hands of all shapes and sizes clasped in solidarity, and at the center, a single figure holding a glowing relic. The figure wasn't Ethan, it was everyone. When the mural was unveiled, a hush fell over the gathered crowd. The relic, now inert, rested in a protective case at the base of the wall, a silent testament to what had been achieved. Ethan stood beside Kadra and Tivrin, his heart full as the crowd erupted into applause and cheers. "It's beautiful," Kadra said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Ethan smiled. "It's not just mine. It's everyone's story." Tivrin placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You have shown them what humanity is capable of. Creativity, intuition, the courage to see what could be instead of what is. These are your gifts. Do not underestimate them." Ethan looked out at the stars, his heart swelling with pride and purpose. Humanity, for all its flaws, had proven that its greatest strength was its ability to empower others, to inspire and connect. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Ethan thought, was a masterpiece worth creating.